And as we look at members of Congress being introduced on stage now, let's get some perspective now from our panel. Jason Johnson is here. He is a politics editor for TheRoot.com and a professor at Morgan State University. Julian Zelizer is a historian and a professor at Princeton University and the author of The Fierce Urgency of Now. Farai Judea is a senior writer of 538.com and the author of The Episodic Career. Also, Errol Lewis is here, a CNN political commentator and political anchor of Time Warner Cable News, and CNN senior Washington correspondent Jeff Zeleny still with us. Jeff Zeleny is in that room in Washington, D.C. So let's talk to the panel now. What is President Barack Obama likely to do tonight? Is take off the gloves? Will the gloves come off?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, John, you know, he will take off the gloves, but I also feel as if you know, he will defend his own legacy. So I think that there's two separate missions. You have to remember that when President Obama was in his first term, he was widely critiqued by members of the Congressional Black Caucus for not speaking directly enough to African American concerns. And that's partly because there is a sort of game of keep away in American politics, where if you're dealing directly with black concerns, you're seen as somehow being too specific and not being in the interest of all Americans. So he's going to do that, defend his legacy. He's in a good place with black voters right now, but Secretary Clinton is not. She's showing some weakness among black voters, especially young black voters, who are 30% less likely to support her than older African Americans. So he's going to make that case for why she's...
Let's talk about that. Why? I was discussing it with a pastor the other day, and it was interesting because the pastor was saying young people don't have the experience that older people have. They didn't go through the civil rights movement. The struggle for them is different. The struggle for older people was they couldn't go to school, to the same schools. My mother even said to me recently, what did we get cattle prodded for and tear gas for and water hose for is to, you know, to have to deal with this crazy election cycle. Young people don't know what's going on. They don't know their history. Is she wrong, Errol?
No, she's absolutely right. And in fact, you don't even have to do it in such a broad generational sense. The reality is somebody who's in their early to mid-20s, this is the only president they even remember is Barack Obama. And so there's a theory, I think somebody's going to probably write it up as a sociology thesis or a political science thesis at some point, that a lot of the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of what black millennials are thinking about these days is kind of a shock, the shock of realizing that what they saw happen with this interesting, amazing, historical sort of move where you have a black president there is the exception and not the rule. Yeah. You step outside of the university, you start to see things a little bit differently. It's not such a kind world out there. That the people who elected Barack Obama don't necessarily show up on the police force in their local town.
But not a shock to, you know, you said it's not so generational, but not a shock, especially to the people on the stage. The people who were on that stage were the reason that there could be a Barack Obama, or, you know, the reason, one of the reasons that all of us can sit here on the stage, including you, Julian, because they fought for civil rights for everyone. It's surprising that it's a shock to young people if they think that the world was, you know, as it is. Barack Obama is, you know, the black president is always possible, has always been possible.
Well, I think, look, you have two narratives. One was the narrative that started in 2008, the possibility of transformation and improvement in American history. But then you have the reality of what's happened. You've had the resistance to President Obama. You've had the resurgence of racism, either explicitly or implicitly in politics. And you've had everything from the issues of policing to voting rights front and center. And that all culminates with Donald Trump and some of the support he has received from nationalist groups. And I think that's what's on the mind of many young voters.
So in the vein of what's going on right now, as we look at the pictures now from the Congressional Black Caucus dinner this evening, their goal, I'm sure most people in that room, is to get Hillary Clinton elected, correct? So then in that vein, and especially needing the enthusiasm of young voters and beyond, how do you get them on board, Jason?
So you remember in 2008, it was all about young white kids telling grandma it's okay to vote for the older black guy, right? So now it's the reverse. It's older black people saying, look, we know what it would be like to live under a President Trump. It's time for black boomers and black seniors to talk to young black people and say, look, I know you're not in love with this lady, but you need to get involved and you need to get active in voting. So it's almost, we've come full circle. And that's what a lot of the Congressional Black Caucus is is doing right now. They're trying to tell people, look, your vote for Jill Stein, your vote for Gary Johnson, that could be a problem.
So Jeff Zeleny, who's in the room, the interesting thing is that on the other side, as we're paying attention to this, but on the other side, the talk has been, and the strategy has been, to say that many of those people up on that stage, the Democrats, they haven't fought for you. They are not looking out for your best interests. The reason that they want you, they just want your vote. They haven't done anything for you financially, politically, when it comes to criminal justice or social justice and beyond, and that's how they're looking to capture the vote.
Right, Don, and Donald Trump made that exact argument just a month or so ago in Michigan when he addressed an audience of black voters, and he said, what the hell do you have to lose by voting for him, by leaving the Democratic Party? I am told that President Obama is going to address that directly, address that pessimism directly. We've heard Hillary Clinton do sort of a litany of what voters have to lose, but the president will also do so tonight, I'm told on. And so interesting, Donald Trump has been trying to reach out to some African-American voters, expand his coalition, if you will. He was in Flint, Michigan this week. A trip didn't go so well for him. But yesterday, the birther comment that he made here in Washington certainly interrupted any of that progress, if he had indeed made any at all. So tonight, Donald Trump will not be in the room, certainly, but he will be sort of present here in an underlying respect in the president's remarks, particularly addressing that, what the hell do you have to lose? President Obama, I'm told tonight, will tell people what they have to lose if they vote for Donald Trump. Don.
So it's going to be a mixture, Jeff, of sentimental and political. Is it going to lean in either direction, or probably an equal combination of both?
I think almost all political, Don. I am told by a senior administration official that this will be largely, almost entirely, a political speech. The president, of course, is sentimental in the final months here, but he has told his advisors that there's a lot of work to be done. The time for sentiment is after Election Day, because in fact his work will not be complete if he is replaced in the White House by Donald Trump. That will erase a lot of his legacy. So not as much time for sentiment at this point as there is for politics and an argument for why he believes Hillary Clinton should be his successor in the White House. And she will also be speaking here tonight, John. We do not believe that they will appear on stage together. She'll be speaking before him, accepting that award, as you said, and then he'll be speaking after her, again, giving somewhat of a call to action to these African-American leaders and, as well as others listening across the country. Don.
All right, Jeff. Jeff is inside the room. There's Trevor Noah and there's Shania Latham, both there, and they will be hosting. Is that Shania? Yeah. They will be hosting this evening, and we will see many very prominent. It's Kelly Rowland. Many prominent African Americans up on that stage tonight. Of course, members of Congress and iconic members of Congress and iconic civil rights leaders as well. The people who have gotten us, helped to get to us in many ways to this moment where we are now, where African Americans had, so many rights and privileges that they did not have. We're not perfect. Social justice, a big issue this election season. And we were talking about this being legacy for President Obama. This is about legacy because Donald Trump has said that he wants to dismantle Obamacare, and many of much of what that's President Barack Obama's signature legislation.
Yeah, absolutely. And one analysis of Donald Trump's proposal said that 21 million Americans would become uninsured as a result of Donald Trump's plan. So it's not only a reversal of a specific president's policy, it's a rollback of access. And I think a lot of times Donald Trump, there is a reason that he is still competing very strongly with Secretary Clinton. It's not a fluke. He is a really powerful orator in his own style, but once you start breaking down his policies, I wrote a piece basically on how African Americans are sometimes called a captured group in American politics because most don't see anything that they want to vote for on the GOP side, but they are dissatisfied with being only offered one party in a two-party system. So someone named Paul Freimer at Princeton did this analysis of captured groups, and this is a real problem for all Americans, I would argue, not just black Americans.
It has been said for a while that some people believe that Democrats take African Americans' vote for granted, and that Donald Trump and Republicans may have a point when it comes to that. But the question has been lately, if you talk to members of Congress, they'll say, yeah, every party should have to fight for your vote. But is Donald Trump the one at this point in time? That's the issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the point of the speech, I'm sure, is to suggest that even if this is the case, there are differences. There are differences between the parties. If you look at an issue like voting rights, Democrats and Republicans have been pretty much on different sides of this debate. And I think President Obama wants to remind voters of that. And I think the third-party issue is very much on their mind. They do not want to start to lose votes to a third party through a protest that give you Donald Trump and the GOP.
As we wait for the president to speak and for Hillary Clinton to get this award, let's talk about something that you said. You said that the president is a great orator, right? And he's a great speaker. So let's talk about cosmetics. And you guys remember Kennedy, Nixon. If you listened to it on the radio, Nixon won. If you saw it on television, Kennedy won. So as we're sitting here watching, and I'm just talking about the reaction from the audience and from people I speak to. There's a clear distinction between a President Barack Obama, who's very comfortable, who sort of leans into the podium and he talks and he moves away and he's like, "Come on, y'all," whatever. And then there is his wife, who is the closer, who can do no wrong, among many, and is a great speaker. And then Hillary Clinton, who admits, I'm not a great candidate, she's not a great speaker, she's certainly not her husband, Bill Clinton. How does she capture that? Does she need to loosen up? Is there something that she needs to do to pull in those young voters that's beyond policy, that's beyond criminal justice reform? Is there something that she needs to do?
She has to be herself. This is the thing.
Does she come off as herself?
No, and that's the problem. Everything Hillary Clinton does, it seems so scripted, it seems so forced, it seems so difficult. This is somebody who was extremely popular when she was at the State Department. This is somebody who galvanized women in the 1990s when she was a progressive first lady who was like, I don't have time to bake cookies.
Yeah.
She needs to be that woman with black voters. That'll be her success.
She needs more swag. How does she do that?
Yeah, when people say she's not being herself, we have to remember her days with the Children's Defense Fund. You have to remember her days in Arkansas. One of the things when I was on the campaign trail in 2008, one of the special moments was being in Memphis and watching her go through the Civil Rights Museum around the site of the assassination at the motel. And she was reliving memories.
Right.
She wasn't just kind of passing through, shaking hands, and making a perfunctory political stop. This is her life. This is what she chose to do with her life. If she reminds people of that, I know for this crowd, that will really resonate.
It says nothing about what kind of commander-in-chief or how she can govern and legislate. This is just, what's going to get her there, what will help her in some way with voters. Every little bit counts in this campaign.
And I would add to that, there was the internal report that was done by Democratic strategist Cornell Belcher talking about how to attract these very ambivalent young African Americans, and things like the fact that Clinton has been meeting with the mothers of the movement, who are the black women whose children were killed by police, and she's been doing it consistently. When young black voters understand that, then they have a different perspective, because there's one of the big divides is over whether or not she really stands for criminal justice reform.
Okay, I've got to take a break, but this is great. I'm here with some very smart people. I'm enjoying this conversation. So make sure you stay with us at home, because it's going to be a very interesting night as we